In September of the year 1793, British Lord Macartney, after an entire year of travel with a large trade mission in tow, was finally received by Emperor Qianlong of China's Qing dynasty. For this first official meeting between a rising oceanic empire and an ancient continental empire, the British side prepared special gifts representing the latest advances in science and technology. The 590 gifts included astronomical and geographical instruments, chime clocks, modern firearms, and portable models of carriages and ships. The impressive delegation included 135 scientists, artists, surveyors, and physicians, as well as 650 soldiers and sailors. Yet, only one person in the delegation had any grasp of the Chinese language. In fact, in all the world at that time, no more than 100 Europeans could read and write Chinese. For many years after this, China's national strength was on the decline, and Chinese characters shared this calamitous fate in the land that had given birth to and nourished them. Much time has passed, yet here on the threshold of the 21st century, a brand new era on a worldwide scale awaits the Chinese language.
众所周知，中国有一个传统的说法：天不怕，地不怕，只怕老外说中国话。
Right now, more than 40 million people in other countries are studying the Chinese language. Yet this represents only the first wave in a surging tide of enthusiasm around the world for learning Chinese. From 1793 to the present day, just more than 200 years have passed. This has been a turbulent period in both Chinese and world history, and it is a mirror in which we can look back and gain another perspective on Chinese society, Chinese traditions, and Chinese unique writing system. The base of the tower was 7 stories high, with each side measuring 87.78 meters. It is estimated 58 million bricks went into the making of the original tower. The tower once crouched like a huge monster overlooking 2 river valleys. Archaeologists identified it as the Tower of Babel, as described in the Bible. According to the Old Testament, the ancestors of the human race originally spoke but one language. As there were no obstacles to communication in those times, everybody lived and worked in harmony and built the thriving city of Babylon between the 2 rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates.
Babilonia era una città molto ricca e i loro governanti avrebbero voluto lasciare nella memoria del mondo qualche monumento che li ricordasse in eterno. L'intenzione e poi la realizzazione fu quella di costruire una torre, una grande torre che arrivasse fino al cielo. Doveva arrivare al cielo per dimostrare allo Shanti, al Dio del cielo, la loro potenza e la loro possibilità di arrivare ad avere un colloquio paritario con il Signore.
As the construction grew higher and higher, approaching the clouds, God grew angry at the hubris of ordinary mortals trying to place themselves on the same plane as God.
于是上帝想到应该变乱人的语言， 当人们之间的语言沟通受到限制的时候，那人们之间可能产生的力量也就受到了限制。于是有一天，修建巴别塔的人发现自己不能够很好的交流沟通了，那么后来巴别塔也就停工，也就荒废了。
Questo dimostra come il Signore in quel momento e con quel tipo di, diciamo, di miracolo, con quel tipo di azione, riuscì a dimostrare ed a punire la superbia degli uomini. La torre rimase a metà e da allora in poi nel mondo occidentale la parola Babilonia è diventata un'espressione che indica confusione.
This legend of the Tower of Babel's abandoned construction is the earliest surviving tale concerning the power of language. But did humankind originally speak one language and one language only? Circumstances change with the passage of time. We cannot know what the original language may have been like, but the biblical story of the Tower of Babel is just an expression of humanity's natural yearning for unrestricted channels of communication. Today, it is common knowledge that the world's four great civilizations sprang up independently. Contact and fusion occurred only long after they emerged, and their languages and writing systems were innate products of their unique cultural environments. Archaeological discoveries have indeed brought humans very close to their ancestors. Historical records offer a chart that traces writing all the way back to the 15th century BC to the four great ancient civilizations. From west to east, we can identify the hieroglyphics of Egypt, the cuneiform script of Babylon, the Harappan symbols of ancient India, and the oracle bone inscriptions of ancient China. While these earliest primitive attempts at writing probably could not mirror actual speech, archaeologists have nevertheless discovered that important information contained in spoken language is encapsulated in these symbols.
最早的创造文字的这主要的方法就是用画图的方法，就是叫表形的方法。因为最早都是表形呢，所以写出来的字当然是差不多的，比太阳都是圆的。有的呢，它这个圆的写的方法不一样就是了。月亮都是写一个不完美的月亮这样子。可是人呢就不一样了，人写出来个人写法有时不完全一样了。
It happened virtually by coincidence some 4,000 to 5,000 years ago that a longing for contact and records arose among all these children of the great rivers. Thus, based on the benefits of environment and experience, they separately drew beautiful pictures to record their thoughts, wishes, and aspirations. They are a sort of Tower of Babel constructed by humans. Stored in them are the skills of those peoples and their achievements. They cultivate in us a reverence for our ancestors and shape our spiritual core. In addition, they embody the cultural bonds holding each of their peoples together. Today, 3 of the 4 ancient scripts have disappeared. What are the special qualities of Chinese written characters that help sustain their existence to the present day? Over 5,000 years ago, the area was covered in lush forests. Yet incessant warfare and conquest between the various peoples living there led to the two river basins' fertile soil being gradually covered with sand, and thereby the magnificent Sumerian civilization was buried too. In the 1st century BC, the Sumerian cuneiform script impressed on clay tablets was replaced by an alphabetic system written on a type of paper made of reed called papyrus. Yet from then on, this script, once widely used in Mesopotamia, and the culture it represented, vanished beneath the dust of history for 1,500 years. In the year 1472, an Italian traveller noticed in the palace ruins of Persepolis, the capital of ancient Persia, some symbols inscribed on a wall. Filled with curiosity, he took copies of the symbols back home, but he could find no one interested in his discovery.
140 anni dopo questa prima scoperta, un altro italiano si reca a Persepoli e fa un'altra scoperta di importanza enorme. Scopre una stele con dei caratteri presumibilmente egiziani che porta in Europa.
What did these prehistoric signs mean? In Europe, it was the Renaissance and the time of modern Enlightenment thinking that fired the enthusiasm for tracing human origins. But these strange cuneiform characters arranged in no apparent order puzzled European scholars for centuries. If not for a certain huge rock, it isn't certain how long the riddle would have remained unsolved.
这个所谓的大石头就是贝希斯敦铭文。贝希斯敦铭文是刻在贝希斯敦村的一个悬崖峭壁上的一个铭文，是为大流士歌功颂德的这么一个铭文。他用3种语言刻成，按照先后顺序是埃兰语、古巴比伦语，其实就是阿卡德语和古波斯语。
为了这个彰显这个波斯王他具有至高无上的权威，所以这个铭文呀被刻在这个非常高的这个悬崖上，路过的行人呢就很难看得仔细了。也就是因为这个原因吧，2300多年来就大家都没有注意到这段铭文。
Then in 1835, the inscription drew the attention of Henry Rawlinson, a young British army officer. Intrigued, he made rubbings of the texts and took them back to Europe. After 12 years of painstaking study, Rawlinson managed to read the section in the most recent language, Old Persian, and with this as a reference point, he deciphered the texts in the other 2 languages. Rediscovered after 1,500 years, the cuneiform script puzzled Europeans for yet another 300 years, until, with the Behistun inscription as the key, the script revealed its secrets bit by bit, and the civilization of Mesopotamia, previously hidden behind a veil, revealed its enchanting smile to the world. History always has surprises in store. The magnificent pyramids of Egypt have stood proudly by the River Nile for more than 5,000 years. Yet before the 19th century, nobody knew who their builders were, and nobody knew of the splendor lying beneath the endlessly undulating sand dunes. In the 5th century AD, a conqueror from Europe sealed off the last group of ancient Egypt's temples and strictly forbade the use of the script of the pharaohs. Thus, the sands of time sealed the doom of the civilization of ancient Egypt. 100 years passed and then 1,000, yet nobody could understand the ancient signs of the pyramids. Then in May 1798, Napoleon led a huge fleet of warships carrying 50,000 infantrymen and cavalry to invade Egypt. This unusual expedition also included over 150 scientists, scholars, and artists. Misfortune and fortune accompany each other. The mysterious veils covering the historical secrets of the East were then nearly all torn away by European hands, and this included the deciphering of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. In July of the following year, while building defensive works in a small town called Rosetta by the mouth of the Nile, French soldiers uncovered what later came to be known as the Rosetta Stone.
当时拿破仑的这些士兵呢，一下子就震惊，然后手里的东西都掉到地上了啊。那么马上他们就把这个消息告诉了科学考察团的语言专家。语言专家来了之后，仔细的查看，发现上面的碑文是用3种文字书写的，其中一种文字他们认的是希腊文，那么他们推测另外2种文字呢，应该写的是同一个内容。那么这个石碑后来就变成了解读古埃及文字的一把钥匙。
Today, the Rosetta Stone, known as the Tablet That Can Speak, stands at the entrance to the Egyptian Room of the British Museum. It has been labelled a spoil of war of the British Army. Napoleon failed to secure the loot of his far-flung expedition. He lost his Egyptian acquisitions, including the Rosetta Stone, to the British at the Battle of the Nile in September 1799. After that, British and French scholars engaged in a long, drawn-out competition to decipher clues to reading Egyptian hieroglyphs. Ready access to the Rosetta Stone enabled the British physicist Thomas Young to quickly identify several Greek names among the hieroglyphs. But this was far from understanding the entire text. The turning point came some 20 years later in France in 1822, when a master of over 10 ancient tongues, Jean-François Champollion, made a breakthrough in the deciphering of the hieroglyphs.
他正确地判断出古埃及的文字当中既有表音符号，也有表意符号，还有一部分符号呢是起着像我们汉字的偏旁作用的，是那种限定符号。所以商伯良等于是找到了一个正确的解读方向。另外呢，商伯良最大的一个贡献还在于，他是第一个成功的解读出古埃及法老名字的人。所以商伯良在这2点上就打败了托马斯杨。
Although it had lost the Rosetta Stone, France triumphed in the end over Britain in the race to decipher the hieroglyphs, so humanity could finally hear the voices that had been mute for 2,000 years. My daughter's lips are lotus buds, her breasts fruits of the mandrake, her jade arms are like vines, her eyes as calm and still as kernels, and her eyebrows curl like osiers.
عندما تجتمع مع بعضها في الصف واحد وعندما تقلب عينيها تظهر حواجبها بشكل رائع.
In fact, before the discovery of oracle bone inscriptions, the earliest incarnations of the Chinese script concurrent with this land's ancient dynasties were well and truly hidden in layers of thick sandy soil. In the autumn of 1899, in the same year the Tower of Babel was discovered, Imperial academician Wang Yirong fell ill with malaria. Seeking a cure at Da Rentang, the famed traditional Chinese medicine shop in central Beijing, he became intrigued by one of the ingredients in the concoction being prepared for him. It was called dragon bones.
到清代的时候的国子监就是清代的太学，因为祭酒这个名称呢，实际上是国子监的一个负责人。那么当时在北京最好的军事学家就是王懿荣。因为的这样的情况，所以呢，他有机会这个接触到的各地发现的古物，他有这个条件。
Soon, an antiquary in Shandong province by the name of Fan Weiqing found some inscribed bones in Anyang, Henan province, and sent them to Wang and asked his fellow townsmen to help examine them.
范姑呢，他好像也意识到这里头有什么东西，就把这个卖给了王懿荣。这王懿荣因为他有这方面的素养，他就觉得这个上头是字，而不是这个一般的这个卖悼念药的原料，所以他就很重视这个，大量的呢出高价去收购。
Eventually, after searching through classical histories, Wang found the evidence he needed in the rites of Zhou and records of the historian. The carvings were indeed primitive Chinese characters used before China's first unification by the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BC. This sensational story was first published in July 1931 in a supplement to the North China Daily newspaper. However, its authenticity was later questioned by a number of scholars, and the academic world now accepts that this report was a journalistic distortion. The truth of this matter still awaits clarification, but one thing is certain. After 1899, the dragon bones stopped disappearing into medicinal brews. Wang Yirong took the bones to his old friend Liu Er, the author of the book Travels of Lao Tsan, and together they carefully studied them. It didn't take them long to discover from the bones some long-hidden secrets of Chinese society of high antiquity.
我认为解读古代文字必须得有钥匙，所谓的钥匙就是必须得具备条件。我认为必须得具备2个条件。第一是有参照，所谓的参照就是像贝希斯敦铭文，或者是像罗塞达石刻，是用3种语言或者是2种语言，这都是用3种语言，写成的铭文。其中有一种是容易解读的，是当时讲的语言，古希腊语或者是古波斯语。就一种语言破解了之后，那么其他2种语言也就迎刃而解了。第2个条件，那就是文化的延续性，也就是必须这个文化是延续的，以后来的文字可以印证前面的文字，就是以后挣钱。
In the absence of a key to decipher the seal inscriptions, people can only admire the characters as pretty pictures. This is why the ancient Harappan script, having no corroborative evidence, remains an enigma. So where shall we look for a key to decipher the oracle bone inscriptions? It took Europeans hundreds of years to decipher cuneiform and hieroglyphic scripts. So why did it take a few Chinese scholars only a very short time to succeed in understanding ancient Chinese characters?
"这说明我们的文化一直是传下来，没有断掉。所谓叫断掉，也是短时间的。这甲骨文没有发现的时候呢，可以说是跟甲骨文断掉了吧？可是后来又找出来了。所以我们从这个文字来看，我们的文化是一条线传下来，一直传到今天，可以追溯到3300年之前。
These ancient symbols, whether pictographic, associative, phonetic or homophonic, have preserved the flame of Chinese civilization, have ensured the recording of China's history, and have facilitated the handing down of Chinese learning to posterity. With the passage of time, the other three great civilizations faded away to be replaced in Europe by the abrupt rise of the Roman Empire, a distant counterpart of China's Han Empire.
《腓尼基有一个非常美丽的公主，名字叫欧罗巴。当时古希腊的主神，也就是雷神，叫宙斯，看上欧罗巴，但他怎么得到她呢？于是宙斯自己就化身成为一头长着金毛的公牛，渡过海去，劫夺了欧罗巴，把欧罗巴驮在自己的背上，渡海回到古希腊。由此，古希腊和它背后的这片大陆就得到了欧罗巴的名称。后来，人们根据这个传说，认为它暗喻着古希腊的文字和文明是来源于腓尼基。
Phoenicia is derived from a Greek word for purple. From the 13th to 11th centuries BC, around present-day Syria and Lebanon, there flourished a people whose origin is obscure. It is on account of the fact that they wore clothing of a bright purple colour that dazzled even when the garments wore out that they were known as Phoenicians. The purple-clad merchants of these people devised a simple system of writing consisting of 22 letters based on some of the special characteristics of the cuneiform and hieroglyphic scripts. This Phoenician script became the origin of all alphabetic forms of writing in the world. But why was it the Phoenicians who invented the alphabetic form of writing?
I Fenici sono una popolazione prevalentemente di mercanti, sono abili mercanti, abili conquistatori, diciamo, di mercati, di coste, che con le loro navi si spostano in tutte le coste del Mediterraneo e dell'Africa settentrionale.
他要做生意，要知道买什么东西啊，多少钱，有多少够，是吧？是这样子，所以他这是很简单的记账。简单的记账呢，他怎么记呢？他用生数字啊，或者是写形字来记不行，他们没有那么高的文化啊，他们就简单的用这个字是写形字里面的生数字里面的这表音的符号拿来写，就这样子你写我写。起初是乱写的，后来慢慢的就变成有规则了，这样子的才产生字母。
Later, the Greeks based their alphabet on that of the Phoenicians, and the Romans in turn formulated the Latin alphabet based on the Greek one. In this way, every independent language obtained the basic means to be recorded in writing. Moreover, in a certain sense, this invention determined the future political framework of the continent of Europe.
字母是语言中的最小单位，理论上能够表达任何一种语言。字母文字有极大的适应性，它与任何一种语言相结合，都可能形成新的文字。正是因为字母文字具有这样的特点，所以字母与欧洲各民族的语言相结合，稍加变革，就形成了今天欧洲这样许许多多的文字。
We can see from this map of 5th century Europe that the boundaries of the Roman Empire stretched from Spain in the west, the British Isles in the north, the northern part of Africa in the south, and through the Middle East as far as the Black Sea in the east. The Latin language, following Rome's military conquests, reached every corner of the Roman Empire. But as a result of the conqueror's dominance, the empire's local languages were greatly weakened, if not destroyed. In the year 392, Emperor Theodosius I made Christianity the official state religion of the Roman Empire. With the power of this religion behind him, Theodosius became the absolute ruler of an empire straddling Europe and Asia. But the era of a unified empire did not last long. 3 years later, Theodosius fell critically ill, and the seemingly boundless Roman Empire faced crises on all sides.
在罗马帝国时期，社会、政治、文化之间的分分合合始终是存在的。作为一个统一的罗马帝国，其实始终试图解决这样的矛盾和冲突，但是看来并不是很成功。那么后来，基督教被定为罗马帝国的国教，其实也是想解决这样的问题。但是呢，不仅基督教并没有能完全弥合罗马社会和政治文化之间的种种差异冲突，甚至基督教教会内部也有很多教义和权力之争。那么这种教义和权力之争，如果向前追溯的话，可能和某种语言的传统有关。
In the Roman Empire at this time, there were two dominant languages, Latin in the west and Greek in the east. In fact, the differences in the Bible's interpretation in these two languages became the root cause of the split between the Christian church in the west and in the east. This being the case, how could the emperor ensure the stability of the empire after his death and the continued rule of his family line? On his deathbed, Theodosius divided the empire into two parts, giving each to one of his two sons. The Latin-speaking part became the Western Roman Empire, while Greek speakers fell under the Eastern Roman Empire.
所以各个国家，我们现在各个地区就利用了这个拉丁文，发展他们自己的语言。虽然保留这个文字，虽然保留一个文化遗产，不过每一个地区慢慢就发展起来他自己的语言。
These linguistic differences aggravated political instability. Although the Bible was the most important, sometimes the only common reading matter across Europe, different forms of speech and the emergence of differences in written alphabets doomed the continent of Europe to division. While the Roman Empire's division into its western and eastern parts was occurring, China was divided into northern and southern entities. In its two relatively independent parts, outstanding figures arose with constant struggles for the throne. Emperors of either Han or nomadic tribes arose and fell in bewildering succession. In the year 386, the nomadic Xianbei, said to originate in the northeast Daxing'an Mountains, set up a kingdom in North China. This is historically known as the Northern Wei. After more than 40 years of campaigning, the Northern Wei succeeded in uniting the whole of northern China. The result was China became divided into two independent political powers, one in the north and one in the south.
这种情况啊，看起来和欧洲 东西罗马分治有非常相似的地方。南方的汉族政权呢，自然是以汉语为官方语言，而北方的鲜卑族建立的政权呢，没有文字，但他们有语言。作为征服者呢，鲜卑人自然是以本民族的语言为习惯，说鲜卑语为荣。所以，不论从哪个角度来看呢，以往那个庞大的 整体的中华帝国已经不复存在了。
At this time, there appeared no basic difference in the histories of the East and of the West. Yet, from then on, the fates of the European continent and China began to diverge completely. What power drove a divided China towards unity once again? In the spring of the year 495, Northern Wei Emperor Xiaowen issued a decree that stunned the Xianbei nobility. He ordered them to stop using the Xianbei language and instead switch to the standard speech of the Han people of the Central Plains. He admitted, however, it may be difficult for court officials over the age of 30 to make the change, but those under 30 must no longer use the Xianbei tongue. 7 months later, Emperor Xiaowen ordered all the members of the imperial clan to drop their surname Tuoba and adopt Yuan, a Han surname.
鲜卑族根已经成为中原的主人。那么在这种情况下面呢，像孝文帝这样的可以说先知先觉的人，他就认识到，如果不抛弃原来一些不适应统治农耕民族的这样习俗，不进行改革的话，那一方面他的统治不能够长久，另一方面呢，他这个民族要会被淘汰。
Opposition arose deep in the imperial palace itself. In 496, during his father's absence on an inspection tour, the crown prince, refusing to change his name or learn Chinese, fled to the old Northern Wei capital, Pingcheng. His plotting to overturn the reforms incensed the emperor. The plot failed. 8 months after his desertion, the crown prince drank poisoned wine sent by his father. He died 10 days short of his 15th birthday. Later, Emperor Xiaowen justified this incident with the 4 characters Da Yi Mie Qin, sacrificing kin for the sake of principle. This ruler with the strength to found a powerful dynasty was unable to create a culture or a script, yet for the sake of his country and people, he had sacrificed family. This was the fate of Emperor Xiaowen.
孝文帝他杀太子，实际上他是为了推行他的整个的汉化政策，他是为了北魏的整个国家的利益，为了他的王朝的利益，他才不得不这样做的。
一直到你看清朝，对吧？甚至连一些周边的藩属国家跟中国之间的联系，很大程度上就是同样的文字，所以从这个角度讲呢，孝文帝的改革之所以成功，有一个很重要因素，就是他采用了汉字，这样他鲜卑族跟汉族之间，那么一种界限就打破了，特别是政治上面就统一了。
In the spring of 499, Emperor Xiaowen, still aspiring to unite the whole of China under his rule, passed away on an expedition to the south, his ambition unfulfilled. He was only 33 years old. This setback was a harbinger of a new period of division for China. At this time, history offered 2 possibilities for the future. Europe was headed for greater division led by its alphabetical scripts. Yet in China, new hope for unity was brewing amid chaos, as the Chinese writing system was gaining strength to bind together disparate elements. With the square characters as the binding force, unifying the entire country was only a matter of time. The 1 begets the 2 begets the 3 begets the myriad of things. After the 8th century AD, the alphabet invented by the Phoenicians began to split into different versions. During the 14th to 16th centuries cultural renaissance in Europe, the phonetic alphabet was applied to the continent's various languages until there were over 40 types of scripts, eventually giving birth to the different countries on the modern European map. In contrast, from the 8th to the 16th centuries, China was fairly stable. This period saw the Tang, Sung, Yuan and Ming dynasties rise and fall, yet the Chinese characters weaving an unseen magical thread stitched together the heart and spirit of peoples with different languages, different customs and even different blood lineages throughout the vast territory of China, making them all conscious of being Chinese. The US historian L.S. Stavrianos makes this analogy. If a man of the Han Dynasty in the 1st century BC could have come back to life in the 8th century AD, he would have found no inconvenience at all. He would have found, in fact, that the Tang Dynasty was very similar to the Han Dynasty. The people, the language, the Confucian doctrines, the worship of the ancestors, and even the imperial system of government would all have been familiar to him. But if a Roman of the 1st century BC had come back to life in Europe in the 11th, 16th or 19th centuries, he would have been astonished by the changes in language, clothing, religion and new ways of life in what had once been parts of the Roman Empire. This continuity in China was due to the nature of Chinese written characters, which retain in them a special essence of Chinese civilization.
但是我们不能说我们汉字是世界上最优秀的文字。什么叫优秀？就看你的文字形式适合不适合本民族的思维和表达，适合的就是好文字。应该说，对于中国话来说，对于汉语来说，汉字是最好的表达形式。对于拼音文字，对西方国家，那是那种拼音文字，对它是最好的文字。
Eastern ways of thought are made known through the Chinese characters, pictographic, metaphorical, and compound. Such features in its script are also key in passing on Chinese civilization. This brings us to think of one man, the founder of the Qin Empire, China's first feudal dynasty, the first emperor of Qin.
秦始皇做了2件大事，后人永远都记得：一个万里长城，一个统一汉字，统一文字。因为文字统一之后呢，就这个文字，我们这是表意系统的这个汉字，一直延续到现在。尽管语言的发展由于各种原因形成了许多的方言，比方说南方，我们广东、福建这些地方方言很复杂，但是由于有这个汉字在维系着，那么我们这个共同这个主流的这个文化能够不断的绵延下来，延续下来。
In the year 1848, the foundation stone of Chinese studies in the US was published. It was called The Middle Kingdom, a survey of the geography, government, literature, social life, arts and history of the Chinese Empire and its inhabitants. In this work, the father of US Chinese studies, Samuel Wells Williams, drew on his 40 years of experience in China to tell the world the following. If Chinese characters fell into disuse and an alphabetic system were used to write the Chinese dialects, China would cease to exist. The Chinese written characters are the quintessence of Chinese civilization. They are also the carriers through which Chinese civilization has been passed on from generation to generation. The Chinese writing form and civilization exist and thrive alongside each other without the slightest sign of decline.